Hey guys, this is Thomas over here, nursemoneytalk.com, and in this video, I'm going to talk about what the best work schedule is while you're actually going through FNP school. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button on this channel. I talk about all things related to nurse, nursing student, and of course, nurse life. And also, if you do decide that you want to go to FNP school, if you're not already, if you don't already have a program, make sure you check out the school search page on Nurse Money Talk by going to nursemoneytalk.com/schools. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to talk about the current schedule that I'm working. Now, if you've listened through any of my other videos, for those of you that are just coming in, I'm kind of talking through as I'm going, well, not really talking through, but making videos as I'm going through family nurse practitioner school. So make sure you check out some of the other ones if you're interested. And because I started school a couple years ago, going through it part-time and whatnot, and then paused for a couple years and then now picked it back up full-time to, go across that finish line, I've had an opportunity to kind of work a lot of different scheduling, if you will, when it pertains to the job that I have and also going through school. And so currently what I'm doing in terms of scheduling is that I work in a GI clinic. And so I'm working Monday through Friday. So roughly about 7:30 to 4 p.m. with a schedule that has like rotating, like late person. So sometimes we have to stay late for like if a case runs over, and then also rotating call for emergency procedures. And so I found that there are actually some pros and cons to the schedule when it pertains to school. And so the nice thing in terms of pros is that this schedule, even without school, but especially with this school, is that it's still very family friendly. Now, you might immediately think, well, this doesn't really have anything to do with school. But when it comes with family nurse practitioner school and the fact that a lot of, nurses going through graduate school, a lot of them are what you call your non-traditional students. And so a lot of them are married and or have kids. And so having a schedule that's family friendly is important because once you get to this stage, so for me, married with a kid, once you get to this point, just because you start school, life doesn't just go on pause. Not typically anyway. There are exceptions to this, and for some people it kind of does, regardless of having a spouse and kids. But for most people, life doesn't go on a pause. And so you still need something that will be able to ideally work with your particular situation. And Monday through Friday, banker's hours, if you will, still is pretty family friendly. You're home in the evenings. You can still probably have dinner. A lot of times you might be able to drop them off early from daycare and then still be able to pick them up. You can still be available for weekday or evening activities if need be, if they're in sports. And then of course, weekends being free. And so this is pretty good. And so the other pros to that, not related to family, is if you are the type of person who, you just like you would get very fatigued by being at work for long stretches of time. Like you kind of need, that break. You don't want to work more than 8 hours in a day for a job. That's pretty good for that. Now, for me personally, that's about as much pros I can find with this particular scheduling when it comes to, working the schedule and going to school, because I think that there are some cons to the schedule, and I think there are some pretty big cons. So the big one is that it's really hard, working Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4, coming back at 4. or 4:30, probably more like 5 or 6 or whatever, and then trying to motivate yourself to study. That's really, really hard. It's very challenging because a lot of times, based on whatever line of, nursing that you're doing, you could easily be emotionally drained, physically drained, mentally drained, or all the above. And so that can be really challenging. The other thing to keep in mind is that there is something called decision fatigue, which kind of adds to this trying to motivate yourself to study. And that is like, I remember when I was looking at this a while ago, just saying that there's only, just saying that as people, we have like so much capacity to make decisions. And then it's like you get a full gas tank, if you will, in the morning to make decisions. And then as you start making decisions, or full battery might be actually be a better way to describe it. And then as you start making decisions, it keeps draining that, as it gets lower and lower and lower. And so what happens is, especially after working a job like nursing is, after you've made so much, so many decisions and whatnot, and then you just get drained by the end of the day. And so trying to muster up the energy to work, to study becomes very difficult, because even in jobs where you don't think you're making decisions because you've been working it so much, you are. It's just second nature. And so you're just kind of doing it because you've done it for so long, but you are making a decision. You come in, give patient a medication, just between you pulling out that one medication from the Omnicell to go give to the patient, how many decisions have been made? You go in there, do whatever you need to do to open up the Omnicell, double check, make sure you have the right medications, pull up the patient, go in, assess the patient, make sure that, right patient, right, do your 5 rights of, what is it? I think it's like 5 rights of patient administration or medication administration. And so, then of course you assess the patient to make sure that they actually do need this medication. Depending on what it is, you're checking vitals, you're doing whatever. So there's a lot of decisions that can come into play just from like 1 or 2 med passes, let alone an entire 8-hour shift. And so that becomes a problem. The other issue with this particular schedule is that what you will find is that for a lot of times you're having to study really late, right? And so, I'm thinking like you come in at 4, so you get off at 4. It could take you 30 minutes to an hour, just kind of depending on picking up, getting back home, just whatever. And then once you get back there, then you're probably dealing with dinner, putting, kids to sleep, or whatever other random things you kind of want to do. And then by the time you get to study, you're probably looking more like at 7-ish or so. And then by that point, you try to pull in like 2 or 3 hours. And then you try to kind of probably unwind and then go to sleep. And then by then it's probably pretty late into the night. And then you're probably not getting that much good sleep going into the next morning as you kind of repeat this all over again. And then even for some of y'all that might say, well, you still have the weekends. Do you? Do you really? Because a lot of things, social functions and whatnot are going to happen on the weekends. And there's just going to be a lot of temptations to not study. And so that has been some of the cons that I found with this schedule. And so to me, the best schedule for actually going to school, especially for family nurse practitioner, because this schedule that I'm currently working will be a problem in probably in a couple months once as I get ready to start clinical. So it's going to be a problem. And so make sure you subscribe because I will be putting a video later on why that's a problem and what I'm going to do with it. So if you don't want to miss that video, make sure you subscribe. As for going through classes in FNP, the best schedule I think is definitely 12-hour shift or 16-hour shifts. Now, I put both of them on there. I'm probably a bigger fan of running 16-hour shifts, but I know that's a lot of times not an option for some of you guys for reasons that's just for another video. And so probably you're looking more like 12-hour shifts, but whatever you want to call it, a condensed schedule, I think is the absolute best option. And the reason why that is the best option is because when you are scheduled to work, you know that that day you're only going to focus on work. That is that you're going to go work, go home and go to sleep. And then on the days that you're off, you can focus. You can actually get up, and then you can actually do a little bit what you need to do, and then you can study. And so you can study without having to get drained by work. And so in a lot of ways, you will be just so much more fresh as you're actually studying. The other big positive that I'm just kind of realizing about this schedule is that, so my tests are online, right? And so with it being online, and then they give you like a window or whatnot to work around. And what I have found is that I am having to go to work, and then when I come back, I have to take these tests in the evening when I'm not so fresh, as opposed to if I was working condensed schedule and then I could just take off for that day and, maybe review a little bit and then just kind of take it in the morning. And so, it's condensed schedule, it just gives you overall more flexibility when you're going to school. And I think that's really just a way to summarize this whole deal. Now, even with all of this pros, right, there are some cons associated with it, right? And there are, just for the sake of just being, just kind of looking at everything from all sides, there are some cons to it. And so some of the big cons will be related to family. And so similar to how I said that the, kind of like the Monday through Friday banker's hours is more family friendly, this schedule, condensed schedule, in a lot of ways can actually end up not being very family friendly. Because you think about it, if I'm working 7 to 7, right, or 7 a to 11 p, if it's a 16 hours shift, then who is dropping off the child at daycare or dropping off the child or at school, and who's picking them up? And so this is where it can get very like not so friendly with these very long shifts. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Not to mention, it is a very long shift. And so there are a lot of jobs and a lot of people where it might not be such a good idea for them to be working such long hours. I think it's kind of one of those things where you really just kind of have to gauge what, what's going to work for you, what's going to work for your family, and just kind of like overall what your needs are. Because ultimately, kind of like what I've said in some of the other videos is that when you are going through school as a non-traditional student, i.e. Spouse, kids, it's really not an ideal situation regardless. And so, you're really just trying really hard to try to make it work, because probably, I guess, the most ideal scenario is if you just weren't working at all. And in that way you can then, really do what you need to do. But realistically, that's probably not going to be an option for a lot of people. I guess you're going to have to be taking out a lot of student loans to make that work. Or, if you are in a nice situation, maybe you can cash flow it. I don't know. I mean, that's really just kind of something that you're going to have to gauge. But anyway, so let me know what your thoughts are. Agree, disagree, some other thoughts. Let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you very soon in that next video.